Wine Wednesday. I haven't even filled the glass and I've got all these friends with me already. Yippee! um, let's make sure we actually are live as we speak. And anyone watching, please let me know whether or not you can hear me and hear everyone that's talking as soon as they begin talking. Because as you know, we're testing the room today. So whoever's whistling, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we're testing the room, and let me first say who's with us so far. Who's with us, guys?
Yeah.
we're testing. Okay, we got Dan. I see Cheryl's here to help and answer any questions. And guys, if you don't want to actually watch the stream while you're live, I will absolutely read any questions that come up. So hello to everybody. Anyone on YouTube that's watching, just to let you know, the way you join today, which we're testing it out, is that you go to Seahorse Sources group on Facebook, go to the room, and click Join Wine Wednesday. But if you just want to watch for today until we get it all tested and perfect, no problems. I'm going to pour me some wine. Cheryl, who else is with us? Who had the wine bottle? Who's that?
Wait.
Huh?
I'm eating
Wilson.
dinner.
It's Wilson.
Oh, hello.
Kim Wilson.
And what wine did you have with us tonight?
Dear God, I don't know the cheapest one for Publix. Red blend.
Hey, red blend. I'm doing a red blend tonight, a menage a trois. Hopefully Facebook doesn't get too mad. We'll find out. All right. Anyhow, okay, well, as always on Wine Wednesday, guys, anyone can ask any questions, even if we're in the middle of talking about something else. We'll get to the question and we'll cover it. But I thought just so we could have something to start talking about tonight, I was wondering, I saw a lot of questions in Seahorse Sources group that asked whether or not a seahorse was pregnant and how to tell between a pregnant seahorse and a sick seahorse. So actually, let's back up a little bit from there and say, how can you tell a male from a female seahorse? Who wants to tackle that one? Dan, you want to tackle that?
Cheryl does.
Cheryl? Is Cheryl with?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure we can.
Oh, okay.
Loud and clear.
How can you tell a male from a female? Female is pretty simple. As you move down the front of the seahorse, and it goes straight back in toward the tail, and there's no extra skin or appendages type hanging out below that, it's going to be a female. When a male gets pregnant, the pouch becomes dramatically enlarged. Do we have pictures we can post? It's much easier to show than to explain.
I know, and you know what? I just said that to Dan. I said, if we hadn't been testing this room thing, you can actually screen share. So if you get if I had a picture ready, then we could show a picture. I'll try to attach one when we're done. I'm so sorry. We were trying to get this to work so hard that, I didn't have the pictures ready, but that's a great plan.
Yeah, well, this is experimental.
Well, I really feel like you explained it pretty well.
Kelly, Lucy's got that.
Go ahead. Did I?
Lucy's got that really chart. I think there's like 6 or 8 pictures, and one's like an eggy female, and the male with his pouch coming to development, blah blah.
Well, I am thinking that while we're doing this,
it's a really good chart.
Well, we will link that when we're done, and if you're able, or if you're on your computer or something, look it up and screen share it. Do you know how to do that, or no? Okay, no worries. I'll try if we.
Let me see if we can share a photo on this.
Yeah. And we're seeing dinner here. Hey guys, I wanted to mention too. It looks delicious. I was going to mention, if you ever want to turn off your audio or visual, it's very easy. You just look at the bottom of the screen and the buttons show up. If you scroll at the bottom of the screen, and you can turn off your audio or video. Doing great tonight. But yeah, and to screen share, that button's right down there too. It looks like 2 papers on top of each other. So if you're able to pull it up, or if we get a lull in a conversation, I'll try to do that. Because Lucy's is a great thing. So sorry I wasn't more prepared, guys. And besides knowing how to tell a male from a female, I know I saw a lot of posts recently about is my seahorse pregnant, and you were describing it, Cheryl. But how can you tell the difference between a male just um, pushing out air or flirting, or even one that has a problem? Is there anything that sets it apart for you? Difference between a male just oh, pushing out air, or Ray just joined. Flirting, whoever has, or even one that has a. Hey Cheryl, if you open Facebook or YouTube,
A male that has,
I'm so sorry, guys.
I'm sorry.
Somebody had YouTube or Facebook open. It sounds better. So go ahead. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, a male that has pouch emphysema is going to float.
Right.
And the thing is, he's going to have difficulty swimming down. He's going to have to struggle to swim down lower in the tank, and he's going to continue to go close to the surface. You will not see that in a pregnant male. Furthermore, depending on how pregnant the male is, sometimes in the very early stages, it can be very difficult to determine whether they're pregnant or just inflating their pouch. So you have to back off and watch them to see if the pouch continues to enlarge over time. Normally, if it continues to enlarge and they're not floating, they're going to be pregnant.
Very good. I mean, anything anybody else would add to that? Go ahead.
Sure.
Oh.
Sometimes the males will fill up with water,
Okay.
and they'll do a false pregnancy, and you can tell the difference between that and whether they're carrying by candling the seahorse. And by candling, you shine a light on the backside, and if they're carrying water, the pouch should be translucent.
Ooh.
Usually, if they're full of water, they'll expel it too after a fairly short period of time versus continuing to get larger.
Are there any?
Correct.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Ray. I don't think you hear me. Okay. Anyways, were you gonna say something?
No, sorry, I had the microphone off while I was muting the YouTube.
Sure.
Stream. I have YouTube up so I can watch the messages that get typed in.
Sure. And you usually have time because you usually join before we start, so I didn't give you time to prepare. Sorry. Kind of winging it.
Well, you sent the email. I went on then, but then once it got on, then it was there for less than a minute, and then it says I left the room.
Huh. I don't know, but that's why we're testing it to see how well it works out for us. So yeah. Anyhow, how often do you experience a seahorse flushing his pouch? And is there anything that, like excitement, flirting, when do you see them pouch flush most often? Let's ask Cheryl first. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, the thing is, when they're actually getting ready to mate or go for an egg transfer, they will dance together, circling together, changing colors. Male will be inflating his pouch. A lot of times you may not see the actual egg transfer, and what you're looking for after that, if the male's pouch continues to stay large and enlarges over the next couple of weeks, then they have completed an egg transfer. Young seahorses can be tricky.
Right. Oh, somebody else just joined. Yeah, this is.
My screen changed again. Oh,
See, Cheryl, can you?
yeah, Wendy.
Sorry.
26, heading to the reservoir.
Uh-oh.
Before about halfway around.
Whoever joined, can you turn down your TV? Welcome. But yeah, thank you. Perfect. Cheryl, for anybody who joins later, we're just testing this out, so there's no worries if it goes well or not. I think it's going well so far, but you can always mute your audio or mute your video. No problems with that. And please come back. We would love to have you in. Just letting you know how to do it. Okay, Cheryl, could you repeat your last question or your last answer because it got mumbled?
No, basically what I was saying is a male that is pregnant, you're going to see him continue to enlarge over the next couple of weeks. He will not be floating. And until he gets very close to delivering, you probably will not see any more dancing between the pair. He may come down and they may dance a day or two before he delivers, but he will keep his pouch closed. It becomes pretty obvious as they get pretty close to delivering.
Gotcha. Anyone else have any thoughts or additions to that? Go ahead. You don't have to raise your hand.
I have a
Just talk.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Is it true that they are sexually mature at like 3 to 4 months?
Good.
If you can see the pouch, yes.
Dan, we need to talk.
Uh-oh.
Look, this is not a pouch. This is my gut.
That's funny, Dan.
And see here I thought that they were gonna say, you gave me a female that turned into male, because that's happened to me before. Has that ever happened to you guys where you really believed you had a female? Yes, I'm distracting from the gut comment. We don't want to look
Yep.
at mine. But
But you can also have ones that change sex.
yes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Dan, real quick?
Looks
Well,
like
over
Susan too.
over a period of years, I've seen several instances where we've had verified females turn into males, and I've had others report of it happening. We don't know what triggers it. We don't know how common it is, and I've had arguments with PhDs that said that I had no idea what I was talking about. But when a female passes eggs to the male and they have babies, that's a female, and when she grows a pouch later on, that's a male. Martin Belly, who used to be known as Lab Doc on the org, actually did a necropsy on a CUDA that I sold that became egg bound. And while she was egg bound, she developed a pouch and had testes.
Oh my gosh.
And that showed up on necropsy.
Oh my gosh. That is crazy. Yeah, egg bound's a whole nother topic. I guess we could get into that. But yeah, so I can't believe, how often does that happen that they change sex though? Is it pretty rare?
It appears to be. We really don't know, because if it's a young seahorse, you don't know if it's a case of a sex change or if it's a case of, when it just slow maturing.
Right.
So, but when they've made it and they've produced, then it's verifiable of what they are.
Gotcha.
Doesn't it seem to be more?
Somebody's
prominent?
got to turn their background noise off.
Yeah, I think it's let me see if I can do it. Okay, hey Susan, we love having you in, but do you have a TV up in the background? It just went.
Just shut it off.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'm so sorry.
There we go.
We want so many.
Oh, no problem.
We want everybody to join, and we love that you're here. We just, got to have it to where we can hear each other. Okay, go ahead, Cheryl.
Dan, have you found the gender transition to male at a later stage more common in Erectus than some of the other species?
No, I've seen it in 3 species that I can say I've seen it in, and that has been Erectus, Cuda, and dwarfs. I question whether or not it occurred in Redi, but I didn't have enough information to really say that it was that or just a late mature.
Interesting. The reason I'm asking is I've only seen it happen once with a pair that I raised, and female pair. And one morning I got up and they were at opposite ends of the tanks, and they both had pouches after that. But I've seen it in cones.
Well, the one that really convinced me that I wasn't crazy and that it was really happening was we had a broodstock tank with 4 pairs. It was a 90-gallon round tub, and one day I was scrubbing the tank, production had fallen off, and while I was scrubbing the tank, I noticed that it was all males in the tank. So I took a closer look and counted 8 males. So I called Abby up and I said, hey, why do we have 8 males in this tank? And she says, no, there's 4 pairs. So she came back and looked. Sure enough, we had 8 males. So we pulled 4, put 4 females in, production came back up, and over a period of 3 months, all 4 females turned into males. And we pulled them out, sterilized the tank, turned it into a fry tank. the very first pair of seahorses I had, we were convinced back then, before I knew anything, that we had a sex change, and everybody kept telling me no, it was just late maturing. But with a dwarf seahorse, the dwarf seahorse was almost 2 years old as a female, and had been in the system. We had 3 females, and we weren't doing dwarfs because we didn't have any males, and I wasn't out collecting or doing anything about it. And one day, Abby says, "We got fry." So I look over there, and sure enough, we got fry.
Right.
And one of the females had turned into a male.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
Yeah. Well, years ago, Dan, you sold a pair of Redi erectus hybrid to a friend of mine.
Yep.
And she had 2 female Redi. And I told her when she's talked about it, I said, be careful, they can change. The 2 that you sent her literally developed pouches within a matter of weeks. She thought she had all females.
That's so crazy.
It can happen.
Do you think that it has anything to do with? I mean, obviously it's something like genetic or something, but could it like we know clownfish can do that just to mate? Do you think this is about trying to mate, or do you think it's about what you're feeding? Or I mean, obviously in your case, Dan, that was pretty specific.
Well, I think it has something revolves somehow around how they do their pheromones, and it has to do with reproduction. Generally speaking, females can give more eggs than males can carry, and females can impregnate, multiple males.
Right.
So, I'd be willing to bet you it has something to do with the continuation of the species in which nature's designed that to happen when things change. We just don't understand what the real trigger is.
Gotcha.
Well, years ago, when Karen Smith and I started working with combs, we could not get any males. Everything was female. And the only way I finally started to get males was to put some of the juveniles in with an adult male. And so there's got to be some different triggers going on there.
That's interesting. I bet you're right. I don't know what they would be, but that's fascinating. Did you have a response, Dan, or go ahead?
There's another interesting phenomena I've seen on rare occasion. One of the Signathet org members had 2 batches of fry that were all male, or at least they turned to be all male. And clearly, the statistical odds of having 100 males out of a batch is kind of overwhelming that something happened. It's not normal. And I found that very interesting. And again, we had no clue what the trigger was. We haven't been able to isolate any single thing as a trigger. And it's entirely possible there could be multiple triggers.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I first started raising seahorses, I was getting about 80% males as they matured. Much more recently, I don't know what I'm doing differently. I end up close with a 50-50 ratio anymore. And it's got to be something in the way I'm handling or something in the tank.
Well, good. Good. I'm curious, and I'm sorry if I'm cutting anybody off. I'm curious though, and Susan, we want to hear from you and hear how you're doing. So pipe in anytime you'd like. But I'm very curious. What's the like the oldest you've seen a seahorse mature, like turn into a male or whatever? Obviously, we're talking about extreme circumstances here, but some are late bloomers, right? That's just a fact, right? Like, Go ahead, Dan.
It's according to the literature I read when I first started, they were saying that seahorses generally mature around 8 months erectus, and I laughed at that because I was getting them to sexual maturity at around 4 months, and there's times where I actually get them down as little as 3 months, but I don't think we really know the correct answer to that. And I think part of it has to do with how fast they're growing. If you're raising a batch and you're feeding them heavily and they're growing rapidly, they're going to reach sexual maturity quicker than if they're being malnourished in the beginning and they're growing slower and it takes them longer to get up to size.
Gotcha. Ray, have you ever...
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Ray, have you ever had a seahorse that you thought was one sex turn into another?
Yeah, but they were just late bloomers. I think about the longest I had. Some of my reed-eye were about 14 months
Wow. That's
before they became males. But
really late.
and I had the same problem. I didn't have any 80% males, but I was definitely on around the 60% anyway. I'm guessing.
Wow.
I don't
You know,
actually have numbers now. At one time, I could have told you,
Sure.
just how many there were, but I don't remember for sure. I just know that I always had more males than females.
these days it doesn't happen just in the seahorse world.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going there.
Okay.
You mean there's another world out
Tell us all about it, Dan.
Okay, well, we can always, I'll check the comments in just a second, see if there's any questions. Susan, or how are you doing? Is there anything you wanted to share, or you just joining to test out with us tonight?
Just joining to listen in. Everything's going great with my seahorses. My babies are doing great, so I'm just in here to listen tonight.
Sure. Really quick question for you. Are you still selling seahorses? And we're not supposed to sell on Facebook, but I'm just asking in general.
No. I've got a couple people that have wanted them, but then they kind of falls through. So mine has kind of slowed down on breeding because the wintertime, I guess, the shorter days.
Sure.
So I've only got 2 batches right now. So
Gotcha.
Well, erectus typically are seasonal, and they'll tend to pick up usually in the early spring and then reproduce through until late fall.
okay, that's what I was thinking because during the winter they slowed down a lot.
They do. Combs, on the other hand, they're on the opposite cycle as far as I can tell.
That's crazy.
They reproduce during the winter months. Wow. Don't ask me.
So obviously, again, guys, you can pipe up with any questions or comments or topics you want. But the other side of, is my male pregnant, is once you find out the male is pregnant, Cheryl and I have actually done a video, and there's a couple more videos still coming about, how to prepare for seahorses. And I've heard Cheryl say multiple times that as soon as you get erectus, you better set up a fry tank. Do you want to explain that, Cheryl? Why do you always say that?
Because they breed like rabbits.
Yes. And Dan,
I call them,
go ahead.
I call them sea bits for a reason.
Exactly. Dan, if someone doesn't want breeding erectus, what's your advice to them? How can they avoid that?
Seahorse chastity belts.
Okay.
No. Well, there's multiple ways to deal with it. One is separating them, males from females. Another is to buy all of one sex. And we could argue the benefits both ways, whether you should get females or males. Short of doing that, there's not much you can do to stop it. Otherwise, it's like putting a pair of teenagers in the back of a 57 Chevy at the drive-in. Something's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about, what you can do if you last minute figure out your male's pregnant. But, oh my gosh, I just totally lost my question. I was going to ask you something, and it's totally gone. Okay, so then I guess we'll move on to what advice do you give someone if they figure out, what are the things they need to do right away if they figure out that their seahorse is pregnant?
Set up a nursery.
Okay, and what things?
Hatch.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Hatch baby blind shrimp.
So
practice hatching food and enriching food. And get ready for a lot of water changes.
Oh yeah, and I will try to get that video up where Cheryl goes through, how to set up the tank and stuff. But she just hit the high notes, start learning if you don't already know how to hatch Artemia. What was the other one? Set up the nursery, get ready to do water changes, and what was the fourth thing? There was something you said at first. I can't remember.
Basically, cycle a nursery.
Right.
One of the biggest mistakes a lot of brand new people make, and it can be done, but if you're trying to use a completely uncycled nursery to raise neonatal seahorses, your probability of survival is not going to be real high because you're going to get spikes in ammonia. you're going to have problems with keeping it clean. And and I know from experience, I started out with 10-gallon tanks from nurseries. And over time, I came to the realization that was suboptimal, and I moved to 29-gallon tanks. From there, I moved to the nursery tubs, and I have 2 tubs plumbed into 29-gallon stuff. So I have a total water volume of almost 70 gallons on each nursery system. And it's much easier to maintain a stable system with that.
Does anyone else in the room right now?
You got that if you heard all I was doing then.
I'm sorry, Ray. What?
I use 4-liter jars.
You use 4-liter jars?
Yeah.
How?
That was with Rita.
About 50 in each one. I got 12 of them. And I would start off with about 50 in each jar. And I put in a little bit of Chloromex, and I put in Nano, and I'll change the water every other day.
I was gonna say I've heard a lot of people use the tank transfer kind of methodology, but when I started trying to breed seahorses, my big thing was I could do the nursery, I could do the hatching of the foods, I could keep them up until they started to wean, and then there was no way. You needed more room. You needed I don't know. I just can't imagine. I'm curious, Susan, what method do you use to hatch?
I've got
I mean,
I've got 2 5-gallon tanks for my fry, and I switch them. I do the transfer about every 3 weeks. I do a complete transfer and a water change every day.
gotcha.
A partial every day.
See, and I mean that did work for me, but that works for you long term? When do you move them to like the main tank or whatever?
Once they are weaned, I will put them into like an isolation basket in my main tank so that I can keep track of them, but yet they've got the water quality of the big tank.
Mm-hmm.
That's really smart.
And that way I can keep track that they're still eating and they don't get lost somewhere in the tank for me not to know what happened with them.
Sure.
One of the biggest problems most people have is when they start weaning, they're going to get a massive increase in bacteria because of the uneaten food, and it's going to foul the water in more than one way. And this is where, if you have like a circular tub, it's much easier to do because you can flush that tub on a daily basis.
Sure.
And it's just, I hear it all the time. All my babies die when I start trying to frozen train them. And I rarely lose them at that stage anymore. But I've been at this for a while.
Sure. And I mean, Susan,
Sorry.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just comes down to really keeping the tanks clean.
Sure. That's what I was just going to agree with you 100%. And, someone like Susan that finds success using that method, it's because she's willing to do the work to keep it clean. And apparently I just wasn't, because that's exactly when I would fail. And I was using 5-gallon tanks to try to transfer. I did switch over the tubs, but I think it also has to do with the amount and size you're trying to keep going. Like if we're talking commercial level or really extreme hobbyist level, or just someone who wants to breed, loves them, and will keep and sell what's there, but it's not like a try to make money a business kind of thing. I don't know, but I don't know. I wanted to very quickly go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, a lot of people too, when they start trying to do frozen training, I suspect they're adding way too much frozen, and also or baby brine shrimp at the same time. And when I do it, I add finely shaved mysis, and they're going to sit there for 30 to 45 minutes, and then they're going to get topped off with some brine shrimp, and then I'm going to clean it. And people kind of I think they throw in too much of the mysis, and it tends to foul their water oftentimes.
Really cool.
Yeah, I agree with that, because when I first started trying to wean them, I know I was putting in too much, and then I would lose all of them because I couldn't keep my water quality.
Maybe that was.
Whereas now I put it in drop.
There's another problem that occurs when you put too much food in with the frozen, is that it settles to the bottom. They start eating it off the bottom, and
Bacteria.
the food can become become inoculated with bacteria, and then you end up with you know, I can't even say the word now. Get bacterial enteritis within the seahorse, and you lose them.
So, really quickly, because
Well,
I guarantee.
thing is-
Sorry, Nicole, I see your question. I'm going to ask it as soon as we're done with this train of thought. But out of curiosity, because that's when I would lose my fry, so I just wasn't doing it. Maybe I was using too much food. How do you measure that? Susan said a drop. How do you know? How do you know how much to put in? Is it a
It's how much they'll eat, and
so you
Yeah.
just
if they eat it, then you and there's none left over, you didn't put in enough. If there's any left over, dial back, and
Yeah.
then you got to clean up right afterwards. You just can't let it sit around.
right? But I'm talking about when they're weaning
Yeah,
and they
because
don't want to eat it. you know.
well, early on, start slow with just a very small amount of shaved mysis, and don't just dump a bunch in and say, "Well, I can clean it up." Go with a very small amount and watch them. If you have the time, if they're starting to pick at it, back off. Give them a little more time to work on it. You know, I call it seahorse see, seahorse do. One starts taking the mysis, they're all going to follow.
Really good advice.
And a lot of people get worried. They're afraid they're going to lose them. But by putting too much in and creating basically a bacterial enteritis, they're going to kill them.
Basically, it's feed and siphon.
So you should be siphoning. How long should you let even a little bit of shaved mysis fit, or sit, not fit, in the fry tank?
You know, there's not an exact answer to this, but the rule that I used to follow was if they were eating it and going after it, I let them go and while they were doing it. But if they had showed no interest in it, then I would clean it up right away. If they were feeding off the bottom, if they didn't consume it all within 5 or 10 minutes, I would go ahead and siphon it out and feed again.
And is there?
I don't want anything sitting on the bottom.
Sure. And I've heard, I think all of you at some point or another talk about kind of the transition and at some point mixing live and shaved frozen. But is there any tricks? Like one I used to try to use myself was giving them the shaved mysis in the morning when they're really hungry to see if they'd eat it. Are there any tricks that you guys use that has worked for you to get them to start
Well,
picking at
as
it?
far as all we did was we'd offer frozen first and wait a little while and then come back with the live food afterwards.
Gotcha.
And we, a little bit different for us because we were doing that several times a day. If I was in a setting like I am now, where I could only do it in the morning, and then when I got home, I would offer it. I would give them a little bit of time, and then before I would leave, I'd put the live food in. I'd siphon up the old stuff and put the live food in.
Yeah. When I do frozen training, they get at that as their food, depending on their age, getting fed 4 to 5 times a day.
Mm.
So I'm not adding a whole lot of frozen, but I want to see them. If I kid about it, you've got to be harder headed than the seahorses. If they're hungry, they're going to start picking at that frozen. And as soon as one starts, everybody else is going to follow. But you have to pay attention to it because if that food disappears within 2 minutes, you need to add more.
Well, I think you guys have nailed it at least as far as my mistakes because I was putting in too much food and I was not as hard-headed or more hard-headed for sure because I'd sit there and worry myself to death and you can't do that when you're trying to be successful. We can
No,
go ahead. Oh, okay.
no, I was.
Go, Cheryl. Sorry.
You're dead on. Right.
Gotcha. Well,
You're absolutely right.
maybe I'll try again soon. I mean, I found ways by following your advice to succeed, but I'd love to find an easier way to just raise like a batch every now and then, because I don't need to be big scale, but I miss it. It's awesome. So
Can I ask a
of
question
course.
about the connection from the nursery tank to the display tank? Susan, I've got that isolation basket.
Uh-huh.
Somebody brought up a concern of the sillates, if I'm saying that word correctly, thinking it's going to be very difficult for the seahorses to navigate and to get through. So I was thinking maybe they're all unfrozen. They're all doing great. They're even flirting and filling their pouches, Dan. And so I think I'm adding the display water tank a little bit to the nursery tank so they could get their bodies ready to fight off any kind of bacteria.
I, Susan, I'll let you answer first.
Well, go ahead on that one because I just
Okay.
take mine straight from the nursery and put them right into the display tank in the basket.
Yeah,
I don't do any transition.
I never have either. I've always tried to keep my fry tanks as clean as possible, and that likelihood is that there's more bacteria in the fry system than there is in the adult tank.
Mm.
And sometimes one of the things I'm always cautious of in moving the fry to the adult tank is that, you know, you want to make sure that your fry is stable before you do it, because it's very possible, sometimes fry systems will crash. And if it's, on the verge of crashing, you move them to the adult tank, then you could run the risk of the adults crashing as well. Um, Generally speaking, the adults should be hardier than the fry, but at the time that you're moving the fry to the adult tank, they should be juveniles at that point, and things should be stable. Um, I generally won't move, they have to be big enough that they can handle the flow in the tank and not worry about them going down the filtration, and that
Yeah.
they're fully onto frozen food. And if that's the case, I don't use a basket or anything. I just put them in with the adults.
Hmm.
Well, I get separate grow out tanks that I use. So when they get to 3 to 3.5 inch range, they get thrown in the big grow out tank. And it works great. But again, this is it's just me. I have my grow out tanks are 58 gallons. I'm nowhere near where Dan is.
Well, I did.
But
Well,
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's by inches then or size?
size, and strength. I mean, if you've got a seahorse, I've seen seahorses that were 2.5 inches I could put into an adult tank with no problem. And I've
Mhm.
had others that I did not feel comfortable with it because they didn't seem to be strong enough.
Okay.
In general, the only time that I do that myself is that if I'm trying to consolidate tanks, or in a case that I've selected some as broodstock that I want to become broodstock, so I'm pulling them early to separate them from the sellers. But the way that I have always done, if you watch my videos, I use the 90-gallon round tub, and I can basically keep them in there from day one all the way to the day after, when
Mhm.
I'm pulling from those tanks when I'm selling. So they stay in the same tank through the whole process. A little
Well,
bit different than home hobbyist
Right.
breeding, but
a little
in the,
different than
in
my kitchen
I don't
cat.
have room for
right,
90-gallon tubs.
I
Bottom
but
line.
right in the home hobbyist breeding, I would, once they're enough where I feel like they could handle the big tank, then I would just move them to the big tank. I'm not opposed to the basket thing. I've actually created dividers in the past for different purposes and experimented with them. To me, it just gets in my way. I'm trying to do too much in too short of a period of time that I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, right.
Well, Dan, don't you also have adjustable pumps so you can increase your flow as they mature?
right.
I do, but not only do I have adjustable pumps, but I also have valves to adjust that flow. And in fact,
Yeah.
the way that we would do it is we would turn the pumps down real low during the daytime, and then we would crank them to the level of tolerance for the fry at night.
Well, I will just certainly agree with all of you because I tried to, do the big deal of setting up a 90-gallon grow out tank. And, yeah, you can't do it in a kid's room. And if you just want to breed, or if you just want to raise your fry, there are ways that work. Susan's proof, so take it for what it is. And thank you for everybody sharing their methods and what works for them. Speaking of
Hey,
flow,
Kelly,
oh,
what,
can I ask this question really quick and then we'll go back to it? I'm sorry, but Nicole's been waiting probably the whole time. And Dan did answer her, but I want to make sure it gets on the record. She said her large erectus pair that she got on February 1st had unsuccessful egg transfers 5 times. The poor things just can't get it together. So if you see your seahorses trying so hard to do an egg exchange and they're just failing, Dan, go ahead and say what you wrote.
Well, what I did, the first thing I would do in that setting is take a look at my flow. Sometimes a change of the flow can the flow itself can interfere with the transaction, if you will. Um, the other thing is sometimes the decor in the tank can be interfering, and sometimes it just takes some time to get it down and practice to get coordinated.
Yeah, sometimes they're too young. I've had my young guys that start going at it. They screw up a couple times. I always tell people your first batch, you can't get upset. Now, you haven't even gotten to the first batch. I feel you. So, do the flow. Cheryl, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, a lot of people I know that have seahorses that don't want to go through the rigors of breeding use a higher flow, which reduces the potential for them to be able to complete an egg transfer. And it's something that they use for birth control.
Hmm.
I don't do it, but know people that do.
That's interesting. So there you go. If you do have a pair and don't want seahorses, up the flow. I mean, don't want fry. Sorry, up the flow maybe.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
And go ahead with your other question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
My question was for you.
Okay.
Kelly. You said you would, you were talking about having the grow out tank, and I'm wondering what is the latest you've lost fry?
Oh,
Because I'm thinking mine are 6 months. I'm kind of golden, but maybe not.
oh no, no, no. What I meant was,
You
go
can
ahead, Dan.
you can lose them at any time. I've had whole batches of, particularly with reed eye and engines. I had a whole batch of engines one time, about 400 or so that I had at approaching 4 months. They were 4+ inches. I was getting ready to turn them loose. In a matter of 3 days, I had none, and that can happen. And what I've seen quite commonly is that a lot of times for a lot of people, that transition from feeding live food to frozen, a lot of times people lose them once they get them on frozen, and that can happen for multiple reasons. The first one being the changeover is too quick, but also parameters can go off and food sitting on the bottom. They're picking the food off the bottom that's bacterial. Once they get bacterial enteritis, that's very easily spread because it's every time they poop, they're transmitting it.
And now I'm just gonna give you my answer because it's not as scientific or perfect. But the times that I lost the fry the most was trying to get them to eat the mysis because I just would overdo it. We were talking earlier. I'd put too much in. I had my losses at that point. Once I upgraded and started putting them once they were eating frozen into the 90-gallon grow out, I never lost any. I literally have sold all of them or kept them in the other display. And now I am honestly just not collecting the fry when my seahorses breed, and my seahorses are quite old, so a lot of times they just don't. But yeah, I'm not having losses, but refer you back to Dan's answer. But yeah, and one question about that, Dan, is you told me a long time ago, whoever just joined, welcome, but yeah, mute or something. Anything you've got open because you're echoing. But thank you and welcome. Okay, Dan, you told me a long time ago that helped me tremendously, and what made me get a bigger grow out tank is you told me something about the number of seahorses per square inch. And I'll preclude that with we've seen Lucy, and people like Lucy and people like Ray keep a ton of seahorses in a tank like this, but they're doing mega maintenance to keep it up. And I'm not good enough to do that mega maintenance. So Dan, do you remember what I'm talking about? Like how many seahorses per water volume?
Well, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it boils down to the number of seahorses per liter. And there are formulas out there that work. And part of it depends too upon the tank, because in a round system, I can get a much higher density than I can in a typical rectangular tank. Um, and then of course size comes into play. I mean, I've kept 500 seahorses in it's considered a 90-gallon tank, but it holds about 80, 85 gallons of water. The problem with the high density is that you run a higher risk of things going south much faster. Right. And you've got to be on top of it, because if things go, they go quick. And once it starts, the effect is just, it's devastating.
So in my final comment would be, if you were asking me, I would say since you've got 6 months seahorses doing really well, I would definitely, instead of trying to transition or keep doing major water changes, get them in the bigger tank if possible. That would be my thoughts. Because you do have the bigger display, right? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
At 6 months, I'd be looking to put them in the adult
Yeah,
tank.
that's what I meant.
They'll start growing faster once they're in with the bigger guys.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've seen them even when I moved from the nurseries to the grow out tanks. I can walk in 3 days later and go, my God, what happened to my babies?
No. And I did get a comment, guys, that said I tried to slow mine from breeding with the flow, but my seahorses started breeding more. Well, you've got some extra happy rabbits, whoever said that. Is there anything else that you could advise, any of you, as far as stopping seahorses from breeding?
I
Get all boys.
an egg exchange
You what?
physically.
How'd you stop an egg exchange?
Interrupted an egg with my
Oh, okay. I've never heard that one. That's a new one.
That is what
I was like,
I haven't tried that one.
That's great. Oh my gosh. Okay, and yeah, I could see. Oh my gosh, even like this is terrible because I see horses are such social animals. But I mean, if you were really just could not stand seeing the fry be born and not collecting them or something, maybe a divider when you see that kind of thing happen. If you don't want to use your hand like she does, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. I wanted to see. I can't. One of the things I'm thinking, if we do continue to use rooms, guys, is I got to make your part bigger because I can't see the little faces. Who joined?
Marina's camera is off.
Okay. And if you don't,
Hi.
hi. And if you
My voice.
go ahead.
Hello.
Hi there.
Okay.
Hi.
Did you have any question, or are you just joining to hang out?
Unfortunately, I missed the start, so I don't want to ask a question that's been asked again. But I'd love to listen in
Okay.
and yeah, keep hanging out.
Sure. You're more than welcome, and no question is too late to be asked. We repeat ourselves all the time. Half of us are drinking wine. We're good. So feel free. But all right. Okay. Well, the other thing that I do want to do is to make sure to make these shorter. So that maybe people will want to come more. And I'm not going to cut you guys off yet, but just letting you know we're getting around that hour mark here in about 10 minutes. So we'll probably just go 10 minutes more. So if you have any questions or anything you want to share, do it now. And then we'll pick it up hopefully again next week. But I'm going to check did you see any other questions in the comments, anybody? Or we doing good on that?
I haven't.
I'm still working on the chastity button for the males.
Right, I know, right? The chastity button belt. Well, we found out she's got a perfect one. It's a hand. There you go. Ray, you're not used to joining Wine Wednesday and me not making you talk the whole time. Do you like this better or nah?
I'm not having no. Pardon me, my throat's gone. No,
You sound congested.
you have to go off to somebody else.
Sure. Well, what I'd like to, if nobody had any other topics that they wanted to talk about today or discuss, I'd like to just, kind of go around and make sure everybody's doing okay and their seahorses. It can be personal, it can be seahorse related, whatever you want. So, Ray, let's go ahead and start with you since you've kind of not been a big part of tonight. Are you doing better from last week? Everything good?
Well, other than I've got a coral that in the Barb's tank that has me puzzled. Leather corals, traditionally, you see them go limp and you think they're going to die, and then they come back again. Well, I've got one that's gone down continually now for 2 weeks and shrinking up, and I have no idea what's wrong with it. And yet I've had corals, or I've had the leather corals for since '94, and they always go down. They go through stages, and no problem. I've never had one to go like this,
And it's
so I have no idea what's going on.
and it's just what? Is it like peeling? I mean, why do you think it's so different than any other time?
Well, it looks like it's dead.
Well, huh.
If you imagine a leather finger coral, and it's just flopped right over, and it's shrinking all up and getting smaller over 2 weeks. Actually, it's a couple days over 2 weeks now. And so I've never had that before.
What kind of leather is it, Ray?
The finger.
Not me running by some of the guys here that I know that propagate them for retail. I'll ask them if they've got any ideas.
I used to get all sorts because they just drop the fingers off, and I'd put them on a rock and then sell them off to people. And
Yeah.
But this is something new to me, and like I say, I've had them since 1994. That's a lot of years.
Any change in lighting?
Changing which?
Light?
Oh no, nope.
Marina, were you going to say something?
Is there any chance?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've had something similar happen as well. I propagate them. Is there any chance you have a similar area eating nudibranch or something like that?
Any nudibranchs? No. I had Asterina snails, but so far it looks like I may have gotten rid of them.
Okay. I've had a nudibranch that looked exactly like the polyps of the leather. Actually eat one from the inside out. So maybe give it a dip just to be safe.
Now the other thing I was wondering about, I have a, what do you call it, a Kenya tree or a Kenya tree? I'm not sure who pronounces it how, but it has a couple red macros on it, and the macros eventually spread over to the rock that the leather is on, and they're kind of crowding it. And I don't know if that had something to do with it or not, because I've never had a leather that had macro growing on the same rock before. But
Macro may be irritating the leather.
Could you remove the macro that's close to it and like put it somewhere else or something? Just to see?
yeah, I can pull it off the rock because like, the damn stuff grows so
I know.
fast in there anyway.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, Cheryl check.
It's that red stuff I sent you the pictures of, Kelly.
Right. I know. I'm going to go back and,
I'm thinking
I'm sorry, I'm going to go back and review the,
the macro may be the problem.
what, Cheryl?
I'm thinking the macro may be the problem.
Sure. I'm going to go back and review the pic.
But right now, shrunk up. It's a good, it's a good 3 inches away from any part of the macro right now.
Oh,
Okay.
well, that's very nice.
And
Any nitrites or nitrates?
I'm sorry,
Any nitrates in the tank?
don't know. I never test anything.
Well, Ray. No, sorry.
And put it this way, every 10 days I do, it's considered a 40-gallon tank, which is actually only 37 gallons. It has a 20-gallon drum with piles of rock in it. So I'm guessing overall the total water is probably not more than 47, 48 gallons. And considering that every 10 days I'm changing 38 to 40 gallons, there's not going to be any nitrates in it.
No, it doesn't sound like. I'm just thinking from what I know from the hardcore friends I have that propagate this stuff, the kind of stuff that they run into.
Yeah.
I'm kind of running it through my brain right now.
Well, over the years, I've probably sold on leather corals 200 or 300 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And in all that time, I've never encountered this.
Maybe he's just getting up there in years.
I was thinking that too.
That's
You've had it for a very long time. So.
Oh, no. Before, the corals that I had before, This isn't one of them.
Oh, okay.
Unless it's come back to me from one of the ones that I've sold off to others. Because I got out of corals altogether when my spine got worse,
Mhm.
and I had to drop all my tanks, and I just kept the Seahorse tanks.
Mhm.
And then eventually I just decided, oh, I'm going to stick something back in there
Sure.
because it's pretty bare.
Next week's topic.
So,
Next week's topic is going to be, or it's going to start off at least with seahorse safe coral. So, but anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ray. Go ahead and finish.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not the same one that I
Oh,
was using. Actually, I had 3 of them that I was getting pieces off all the time.
Well, anything we can't.
And,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
but if they didn't drop any fingers or pieces off to propagate at any time, then I could just cut a piece off and the same thing would happen. Just throw them.
yeah. Finger leathers are usually pretty hard
Yeah.
and pretty easy to take care of compared to some of the other stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
this is what we do when we have a question that we've kind of bashed or went back and forth about, and everybody's got some ideas, but we still got to check with our other sources. And I want to go look up the pictures of the macro, see if I can learn anything about that and if it affects, these types of coral. So we all go research and come back next week. Or feel free, if you see this later, guys, comment if you have a thought on it for sure. But Ray, hopefully we'll figure it out, or hopefully it'll just come back. That's my real hope for you, because I've had some that I literally thought were dead and they come back. I wish Sam had come too. She's really good with the leathers, but just
I think I'm going to power.
you're gonna what?
Oh,
I'm going to turn a power head on it, shoot a power head right at it, see what happens.
Hey,
yeah, that's a good
really
idea.
good. I agree.
Some of this stuff, like Senilaria and some of the leathers and stuff, they'll all of a sudden go limp and look like they're going to die, and
Yeah.
3 days later they're back to normal.
Well, he's had weeks though, so not trying to cut anybody off, but I want to
Yeah.
get around to everybody. The other thing is, guys, when you join the room, the other thing is once I end the live stream, the room is still going. So the cool people that enter the room get to talk after the stream. Just saying. So, all right. So again, let everybody look it up. Any comments? Let us know. Let's see, Susan, are you doing okay? I know you said so already, but anything you wanted to give you a minute to just, are you personally doing okay during the quarantine, and how are your seahorses and all that?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I haven't worked in 3 months because my job has been closed because bartenders aren't necessarily essential,
They are to me.
especially at event venues.
Right.
Oh, I know they really are, but darn, I work at a concert venue.
Gotcha.
So, but I've just been taking this time to get my tanks back in order because, I've got the 2 reef tanks as well, and taking this time to get them back in order because I've been working a whole lot before.
Sure.
And working nights it kind of slowed me down on the tank maintenance. So, but other than that, not working, everything's going great.
Good. Well, I'm so glad to hear it. And just an FYI, as we test this further in future weeks, if we don't have as many people join, you can literally screen share, turn it around, and show your reefs. Not, if you ever wanted to, we'd love to see them. So just a thought. Anybody can do that. So, and I can show you how some other time. Okay, was it Marina? Was that her name? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hi. I just. Do you currently have seahorses?
Hmm?
Yes, I do. I have some seahorses. I've got 5 in my seahorse tank, as well as 4 in quarantine at the moment. Unfortunately, the ones in quarantine have a bacterial infection, so I've been treating that. That's been about 3 days now. And the good thing is I think we caught it pretty early while the seahorses were still eating and quite active, and it's not spread. So I'm hoping they get better.
That's awesome. Really quickly, what what?
Are you doing anything in the way of remedying the cause in the display tank?
So these were new seahorses. They've never gotten to the display tank.
Good question, Ray. But yeah, I by the way you
Um,
said it, I figured that they were new. Yeah, I was just curious if you're willing to share what you're using to treat the seahorses and how you determined, or whatever you're willing to share about it.
yeah. So I've lowered the temperature in the quarantine tank
Good.
to stop the bacteria spreading as fast. We're also doing lower salinity and treating with two different kinds of antibiotics. So I'm in Melbourne, so we've got access to trisulfur here, but a friend had some furin, so we're also using some furin.
Well, that is perfect and good job. And have you seen some progress so far at all? Or I know it's been just soon, but
Um, it's only been, well, this is going into the third day,
sure.
so it's been about 2.5 days. It looks like there's been a very slight little bit starting to heal,
Good.
but yeah, it hasn't started spreading, so I'm hoping it's just a matter of healing now.
Okay, so it's actually like an open wound that you can see, and it's on all of them, or
It's primarily on one,
okay.
and the others have just sort of the start of it, I guess.
Mm.
But don't know how to add a photo on, but
If you
sort of
sorry.
white patches that looked like we were eating his flesh.
Yes, you know what? I had to deal with that myself. You're using the right drugs. I cured 2 or 3 seahorses of that exact thing with those medications. You're doing everything right. So my main thing to say is just good luck, but you're doing everything right. So, and next week, I promise, if you come back, we'll have a way for you to share a picture. I've got to learn how to do it. So this is our first week doing this. Dan, go ahead.
What species do you have, Marina?
I have cooters and barbarites.
Okay. What area? What area are you located in?
Melbourne, Australia.
Okay. If you can get a hold of it, I would highly recommend getting a hold of some Allison.
Mm.
Yep.
Allison.
Yep, Allison it's sometimes it's sold under different names such as Allimax, and there's a couple of others, but Allison is the component of garlic that is so strong and so good, and it's very hard to keep stable. But Peter Jostling in England figured out how to stabilize it, and it's sold under different names. Usually, you can find it on Amazon, and what I have found is that when it comes to open wounds, it's about the most effective thing I've ever used on them, even more so than antibiotics, because Allison will actually permeate through the cellular wall. It's absorbed in the skin and it kills both bacteria and funguses, and it'll also do in many different parasites. And I would continue with the antibiotics, but if you could get a hold of some Allison, I would get some of that and put it directly on the wound. You have to lift the seahorse out, pat the area dry, put a drop or two on, wait about 5 seconds, and put them back in the tank. And I've seen some miraculous cures doing that.
Just really quickly,
Oh, thank you.
sorry, I'm so sorry I interrupted you, but really quickly, maybe we are talking about a different thing because you said like it looks like the flesh is being eaten. Dan, and I'll let you speak, Marina, in just a second. But when I had this occur, it was like literally down the whole side of a seahorse. You would really put Allison on that whole part?
That might be a little bit more difficult, but if you had the gel, you probably could.
Okay.
But flesh-eating bacteria can be very localized, and it can also engulf a tremendous area. If it's engulfing a tremendous area, I would probably put the seahorse down and focus on the other seahorses on getting them to make it.
Well, I'm with you, Marina. Keep trying what you're trying, and we'll put a link to Allison if I can find one that works for your area as soon as we're done. But I wanted to let you continue. Was there anything else you wanted to share, or are you doing okay?
Yeah, thank you. The Allison sounds like something that will be great to have on hand just in case of
For
emergency
sure.
as well. So definitely something that I'll grab a hold of.
Marina, what is your current tank temperature on those seahorses?
On those seahorses, it's 19 degrees Celsius.
I can't convert. I think Dan's doing it quickly. But Cheryl,
I'm sorry.
Well,
keep in mind these are new
I just wanted
seahorses.
to interject
Go
real
ahead.
quickly.
Go ahead, Dan.
Alimax is available on Amazon in Australia.
Post the
Oh,
link.
awesome. Thank
I don't know how to do that because I'm looking on a computer and I'm talking on a different device. It's Alimax, ALLIMAX.
Okay.
And I would
Thank you.
probably get the liquid version that comes in a liquid, a gel, and a capsule. And I like using the liquid version the best. I just put a drop directly on the wound.
Thank you very much. I will grab some of that. Thank you.
And please come back and let
How
us.
many degrees?
I'm sorry, Cheryl.
How many degrees did she say?
She said 19 degrees Celsius.
19. Okay,
And
that's
and
good.
they are new seahorses, and she said she lowered it for the issue. And I would just say, I think Cheryl's got
Okay.
something else to say, so I'm trying to talk quick. I would just say, please come back and let us know how things go, because we definitely care. Okay, did you have something else, Cheryl?
I will. Thank you.
No, I was just verifying the temperature because that can also make a significant difference.
And from her very first statement, she knew what was up. She had it all down, so I'm very impressed. Add the Allison, you'll probably be in shape. Good, doing good. Dan, did you have something else to say?
No, 19 Celsius is 66 to us. And that's pretty cool. And that's, I think, the right thing to do.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. And Wilson, how are you? And how are your seahorses? And anything you want to share before we cut it tonight? Hey, Chimp. Go ahead.
Girl, I don't have too much. I just got the terrific 10 babies. Trying to make more babies like that Miranda Lambert song.
She's on a baby thing. Oh, not on a baby thing. No more babies. Well, next week when we figure out more of the
No.
details, we want you to show us the babies. Do you have kids of your own too? All right, moving right along. Miss Cheryl, everything going okay with all of your seahorses and you? Did she leave me, Miss Cheryl?
Oh, wait, I was double checking something.
Oh.
I had a package that was supposed to be delivered today, and it got hung up in all the power outages for UPS.
Oh.
So I was just looking at that. If it was still coming tonight.
Aw.
Fortunately, it's not.
It's not, you said?
It's not live. No.
Oh, bummer. Well, I'm gonna hope you get it tomorrow. But are all your seahorses and your tanks doing well? Anything exciting, or are you okay? Doing all right with all this quarantine stuff?
I've got one male that's definitely pregnant, and lo and behold, the little pair that was supposed to go to a friend of mine, but we haven't been able to complete the transfer yet because of the coronavirus. Guess who's making babies today?
Oh no! Awesome. That's great. Well,
I'm watching and I'm going, no.
Well, you'll have more. I mean, you can't be mad. Well, you could, but.
So I'm laughing. And yeah, it's one of those things where, seahorses will be seahorses.
Right. Gotta love it. All right, Dan, anything new with you? Anything you want to share? How's your bike? Still riding?
Well, I'm one male that is not pregnant. My bike thing, I finally got my endorsement, which was a major undertaking. Last week I went down to the DMV to get my license squared away, and the line was over 100 people outside the building, and that I have no idea the 50 or 60 people that were inside. I just turned around and left. Today we had about 5 to 7 inches of rain before daylight, so the roads were flooded. So with 2 feet of water in the road, I was able to get up there, and most people didn't. So I got in and out. Other than that, everything else is, beginning of hurricane season, starting to pay attention to the tropics.
Right.
which Cheryl, pay attention for next week.
Did you catch that, Cheryl?
Now,
Yeah.
run that one by again.
Yeah, the storm in the Gulf.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first we get hit with an impeachment, then we get hit with a pandemic, then we get hit with riots, and now we've got a hurricane in the Gulf, not to mention all the storms and the softball-sized hail that we've been having here.
Right.
Never ends.
It's been fun.
I was telling them right before I was telling Dan right before I started, I finally, I figured out all these things about getting the stream to work. And then I was like, oh my gosh, there's a siren. There was literally 5 minutes before we went live, a siren going off crazy, which I'm in Indiana. I shouldn't complain. I don't have hurricanes, but it was thundering, storming, raining. It all stopped for us though. Thank goodness. Hey, but I feel for you guys. Please be safe. Dan, do you have big?
Well, I'm not.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not real close to the Gulf, and we usually get some rain and some wind and stuff. Cross my fingers, we've never really had true hurricane force winds where I'm at.
Good.
But this year, you never know.
Right.
Well, your ways in.
Late 2020 filling.
Anyway, good night, folks. I gotta go feed these seahorses.
Bye, Ray.
9
Good night,
o'clock.
Ray.
And Sir,
Hi, Ray.
and when you,
We'll see y'all next week.
yes, sir. I'll let you know either way. I take personal care of making sure you know what to do.
And welcome to Australia.
Yay.
The only place in the world I've wanted to go and never made it.
Oh man, I want to go too. We should go together, Ray. Good.
Well, I can't anymore. My health won't let me make it anymore.
Well, you know what?
And especially around.
Well, I was gonna say maybe we could get Chris or our new friends or someone to, let you go virtually, show you Australia, something like that. Get you in there and be like, go that way, go this way.
But
What?
all my seahorses came from there.
Hey, see?
Well, next door to it anyway. I think they're in New Zealand, aren't they?
No, they're in Australia.
Isn't that where Chris?
No, he's in Australia, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Tasmania?
I don't know. I'll have to
There's
check.
a big
Go ahead. Sorry.
breeding facility in Tassie, in Tasmania.
Yeah, that's where I got all mine from. I have abdominalis and Barbary.
Do you still have any barbs?
Do I?
Yeah, you don't have any barbs anymore, do you?
I've got barbs and abdominalis.
Well, there was somebody that I know. She ordered some barbs from Hawaii, and trust me, when they came in, they were not barbs.
Oh, these are barbs.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
But it was expensive. My order was over $700 Canadian to bring the shipment from Australia.
Yeah.
And sure,
But
She was
here
really
the supply.
I was gonna.
The only thing we get here is Asian imports occasionally will come into the LFSs. We
Mhm.
haven't been breeding here in Canada anymore since I quit.
Well, I was gonna say very quickly, Cheryl, also because I know that you get so busy with what you got going on, you didn't get to see. But a few weeks ago, he actually had to. It was the Barbori that had the pouch emphysema, right, Ray?
Yeah.
And he was
Yeah.
able to fix it and got him all better. So that's hats off to Ray.
Did oh, excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a stubborn case.
but you got it.
Anyway, got to run, folks.
See you next week.
So we'll see you next week.
Okay, bye, Ray.
Hey, you take care.
Have a great one.
Good night.
Next week.
Bye, Ray.
All right, before I cut the stream, and then as Ray just did, guys, you can always leave anytime you gotta go. No problems. We just appreciate you joining. And I'm gonna stop the stream, and then we'll be not live anymore, and you can come and go then too. But Dan, I wanted you to get. Did you have anything else you wanted to share at all? Because I kind of cut you off.
Now I'm running low on females, so I still have some of the little guys left, but
Sorry.
pretty tight on
I'm
females.
so sorry.
Hey, those little guys are really creating chaos because they really think they're hot studs.
Oh, they do.
I don't care. I know.
Is it?
My littlest one, he won't leave those big females alone.
I know it, but you know what? I know I
Oh,
saw
shoot.
She gets a little bitty guy.
Wilson.
If she gets a little bitty guy, she knows he's popping out babies like there's no
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I saw Wilson give me the eye. We thought Dan was talking about human females, but it's all good. No. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, everybody, give a little.
No, I was gonna give him some of his own.
I hear ya. Okay, guys. Well, I do want to.
Everybody that's got minis, send the fry to Dan.
All right. Well, I do want to keep it shorter, guys, so we can talk. And once we're not live, everybody say goodbye for this Wine Wednesday. All together now.
Goodbye.
All right.
Goodbye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye. All right. And we are not live anymore. Okay. Thank you guys so much for coming and